You think other people are looking down on you when they interrupt you, when they aren't really listening, when you speak. But the room doesn't respond. But there's something you've never considered. They aren't looking down on you. They are simply reading you very quickly and very accurately. And the most terrifying part is, it was you who taught them how to do it, little by little, without you even realizing it. There are those moments you're speaking, and then, mid-sentence, someone cuts you off. It's not that they're trying to hurt you, but the way they do it makes you realize something. Your words just weren't important enough for them to wait for. You stop talking, not because you've run out of things to say, but because you feel there's no point in continuing anymore. You give a small smile. You nod, pretending that everything is fine, but inside, you know exactly you were just dismissed. Then there are other times you're in a conversation. Everyone is talking, sharing, laughing with each other, and you just sit there, listening, waiting for an opening to jump in. But that opening, it never comes. And slowly, this quiet little thought starts to creep in. Maybe I'm not interesting enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it. You feel yourself shrinking, right there in those conversations. But stop for a moment and look closer. The issue isn't so simple. There was this one moment, a small thing, but I remember it perfectly. It wasn't an important meeting. There was no pressure. No one was trying to show off. Just a normal conversation. When it was my turn to speak, I started talking. Not too fast, not too slow, just a little more careful than usual. I thought, if I spoke clearly, everyone would understand. But when I stopped talking, nothing happened. No one reacted. No one followed up. It wasn't that they didn't hear me. It was that they didn't feel the need to respond. The conversation just moved on, and my point, it vanished. So quietly, as if it was never there at all. I just sat there, keeping my posture the same, nodding, listening, but inside, something just sunk. It wasn't anger, it was that familiar feeling that I'm just not that important. A few minutes later, someone else spoke up. They made the same point, but with more ease, more relaxed, with no need to prove anything. And this time, everyone listened. The energy in the room shifted. I looked around, then I looked down, and I realized it wasn't that my ideas were bad. It's just the way I presented myself didn't command any attention. But at the time, I didn't understand that. I just thought, maybe they just don't respect me. It took me a while to realize something. Maybe the problem wasn't other people, it was about the way I was showing up in front of them. We often believe that others will see our true worth, that if we're good enough, right enough, or sincere enough, then it will simply be recognized. But reality doesn't work that way. People don't react to true worth. They react to what they see first. The way you start a sentence, the way you hold your gaze, the way you pause, or choose not to. These things happen so fast that you don't even notice them yourself. And in those first few seconds, a decision is made. Not, is this person competent, but is this person worth listening to? You aren't being misjudged. You are being judged with perfect accuracy based on the signals you send out. If you speak quickly, others don't think you're smarter. They think you're rushed or uncertain. If you laugh things off, they don't think you're easygoing. They think you won't push back. If you stop and restart your sentences, correcting yourself, they don't think you're being careful. They think you aren't in control of your own words. None of this is a malicious judgment. It's just how human beings read each other. It's like how you can walk into a room and instantly feel who has gravity, who is the one people will listen to. No one explains it, but everyone understands. And the interesting part is, the people who get noticed aren't always better than you. They just show up differently. They speak more slowly, not because they can't speak quickly, but because they feel no need to rush. They pause in the middle of a sentence, not because they've forgotten their words, but because they know that silence makes other people wait for them. They don't try to interrupt because they know that when they decide to speak, others will stop and listen. And when you really look at it, you start to understand. You aren't any less valuable. It's just that the way you present yourself hasn't yet taught others to pay attention, and that has nothing to do with who you truly are. It has everything to do with how you show them who you are. There is one truth that took me a very long time to accept. The way people treat you isn't random. It is a direct result of what you have taught them. You don't realize it, but you are teaching people how to treat you, little by little, not with your words, but with your reactions. Every time you're interrupted and you just stop talking, you think you're being polite, but the other person learns that they can talk over you without any consequence. Every time you disagree, but you nod along just to keep the peace, you think you're avoiding conflict, but the other person learns that your opinion doesn't have a backbone. Every time you react instantly, replying fast, agreeing quickly, explaining yourself the moment you're misunderstood, you think you're being responsive, but the other person learns that you are always available and your time doesn't have to be respected. This isn't something anyone is doing to you on purpose. This is just how human beings learn from patterns. It's like how a child doesn't need anyone to teach them, but they still figure out who they can make demands of and who they can ignore. Adults, they aren't much different. They don't analyze you. They just watch and adjust how they behave based on your reactions. If you're always easy, they won't respect you. It's not because you're a bad person. It's because you're too easy. If you're always available, they won't wait for you. It's not that they don't need you. It's that they've never had to wait. And the hardest part to accept is all of this. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds up through the smallest details. The way you look away, a sentence you don't finish, a time you choose silence, even when you know you should speak. These little things, when repeated long enough, become the image of you in other people's minds. And once that image is formed, people don't question it. They just treat you exactly according to that image. This is why there are certain people who don't talk more than you, who aren't more talented than you, and yet they are always heard. It isn't because they're lucky. It's because they don't accidentally teach others to disrespect them. And when you begin to see this, you realize the question was never, why don't they respect me? It was, why do I allow this to keep happening? There is something that no one ever really says out loud, but everyone feels it. Respect doesn't come from being a good person. It comes from your boundaries. We grow up taught to be kind, to be accommodating, to be the one who understands. And slowly, we come to believe that if we are just good enough, other people will automatically respect us. But the reality is, model. It goes in the opposite direction. Kind people are often the ones who get overlooked, not because they lack value, but because they don't set clear boundaries. They listen, but they don't ask to be heard in return. They let others speak, but they never reclaim their own space. They offer understanding to others, but they don't ask for it for themselves. And over time, that sends a message that they can be put last. On the other hand, there are those who don't talk more, who don't try harder, but when they speak, people naturally stop to listen. It's not because they are louder. It's because they have something that is perfectly clear. Standards. They don't need to say, respect me, but the way they talk, the way they pause, the way they respond, it shows everyone else exactly where the line is. And when that boundary is demonstrated clearly enough and consistently enough, other people will adjust accordingly, not because they have changed, but because the way you now carry yourself leaves no room for them to treat you otherwise. People don't really respect intentions. They don't care how much you want to be heard or how much you feel you deserve it. They only respond to what is repeated. If you always give in, they will get used to you giving in. If you always stay silent, they will get used to you not speaking up. If you are always agreeable, they will get used to not having to consider you. And when that repeats for long enough, it's no longer just a behavior. It becomes the way they see you. That is why Stoicism doesn't teach you how to make other people treat you better. It teaches you to master yourself. It's not about changing the world. It's about not accidentally allowing the world to treat you for less than your worth. And when you begin to understand this, you no longer ask, why don't they respect me? You start to ask, have I made my standards clear? And when you see it that way, the next question stops being, why are they treating me like this? Instead it becomes, what do I need to change? Not changing who you are, but rather how you respond. In those very small moments, it all starts with your first reaction. When someone interrupts you, don't quickly laugh it off. Don't just yield. Simply hold on to your thought and continue speaking. Not any faster, not any harsher. You just don't stop. That moment, it's small, but it tells the other person that you will not be easily pushed out of your space. You'll come to realize you don't always need to react right away. When someone questions you or when you're misunderstood, don't rush to reply. Just pause for a single beat. It's a very short pause, but it's enough for you to choose your response instead of just reacting. This is what Stoicism is about. It's not about controlling the world. It's about controlling yourself. You'll also start to notice your own pace, the way you speak, how you finish a sentence, how you move between your thoughts. You don't need to try to be more eloquent. Just slow down a little, enough so that each word carries weight. And when you speak, don't look away, just hold their gaze, not to intimidate, but to show you are present. These things, they seem so small, but when you repeat them long enough, they completely change the way other people react to you. Not because you're acting, but because you no longer react from your old habits. You no longer rush. You no longer avoid. You no longer shrink yourself. And when you stop doing that, other people can't keep treating you the way they used to. And if you look back on all of this, you'll start to understand that true Stoicism isn't about becoming cold or distant from other people. It's the ability to maintain control in those very small moments. When you want to react instantly, but you choose to pause. When you want to over-explain, but you choose to be brief. When you feel overlooked, but you don't rush to withdraw. That is emotional control, not by suppressing your feelings, but by not letting them decide your actions. Stoicism doesn't help you control what other people think of you. It helps you stop depending on it. And when you're no longer dependent, you start to build a different mindset, more stable, more clear. It's not because you suddenly become stronger, it's because you start to be more disciplined with yourself. Discipline in how you react. Discipline in how you show up. And from there, everything around you starts to change. Not because the world itself has changed, but because you are no longer the same person. Maybe, after all of this, you'll start to look back at those familiar moments and realize how you used to shrink, how you used to give in so quickly, how you stayed silent, not because you were weak, but because you hadn't yet learned to control how you presented yourself. You don't lack value, you just haven't expressed it in a way that makes others pause. And when you start to change, not by raising your voice, but in very small ways, the way you pause, the way you look at someone, the way you respond, you'll start to notice something. Other people start to change too, not because they've suddenly become better people, but because the way you now carry yourself no longer allows them to treat you the way they used to. If you've ever felt this, try something. Just observe yourself the next time it happens. And if you had a realization today, leave a small sign, just one word. Understood. Stoic Code isn't here to help you change the world. It's here to help you stop being defined by it. And that is where everything begins.